everyone, welcome to another video. I hope you all are hanging in there with all of the coronavirus quarantining going on. It's getting a little crazy out there, so I hope you are all safe and well, and if you're not well, I hope you get well soon. To lighten things up a little and talk about a happier subject, I've chosen a particular question out of this book, Hey God, We Need Answers, written by the Source of All Things, channeled through Elliot Eli Jackson. I wanted to read something a little more uplifting to assist everyone at this time. The question that was asked of Source is, when will things get easier for woman and mankind? They already have, if you know anything about the ways in which early man and woman lived, and the way they lived in the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and early 19th centuries. I wanted to take this opportunity while everything seems terrifying out in the world, and it feels like a lot has changed, and there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, and some people, think the world is ending. Sources said that it's not. We will go on. Everything will, be okay. But I wanted to take a moment to assist all of us, including myself, with remembering to come back to a place of gratitude at the end of the day. No matter how scary things get, no matter what kind of day we've had, no matter how uncertain the future may seem or how painful the past is to remember, we all have to approach our lives from a place of gratitude. As I've mentioned in previous videos, that manifestation is happening all the time. We're always manifesting whether we think we are or not, and so the vibration that we send out into the universe at all times is very important. One of the best ways you can lift your vibration is to express gratitude, and so I wanted to sort of think about the things that we do have to be grateful for, even though there is so much going on right now in the world. Whether or not however we seem to feel about whether our respective world leaders are doing a good job or not, we have a lot that we can look to say, hey, things really are pretty good, all things considered. So I had written a few things down that I wanted to talk about, and we'll get there in a second. All right, I've got my list. So, with respect to healthcare, I wanted to talk about how things today, though they may seem much more fast-paced and much more confusing, there is a lot more that we can be grateful for today than there were in the previous, several centuries that Source had mentioned. So in terms of healthcare, I'm going to talk about the revolution of germ theory. This occurred in the mid-19th century, where scientists and medical professionals figured out that germs were a thing and that sanitization was really important. So we developed a means to learn about germs, to get rid of germs through things like vaccines and antibiotics. And sanitization practices have only gotten better with every passing year. And, even though things couldn't seem bleak during times like this, like a global pandemic, we have a lot that we can look to say, thank God at least we have this. So things like infant mortality rates and maternal mortality rates. for the majority of humanity's existence, it was pretty likely that the majority of your children would not make it to adulthood. That's why people had so many dozens of children, because somebody needed to survive in order to carry on, whatever business the family was into or help with whatever needed to be helped with in the household. Another reason why we had so many children is because birth control was not widely available or a regulated thing. I know that there were different methods of birth control that ancient civilizations did use, but nothing like what we have today. So that is yet another thing that we can be thankful for in this modern day and age is birth control. We can choose when we have children and how many we have, and I think that's a really positive thing that we can look to and say, wow, I'm really grateful for that this exists. So many diseases that existed in the past no longer are an issue or as much of an issue because of vaccines. Some diseases are now making a recurrence, which is too bad, but for the most part, there are some diseases that are preventable. And that is something that was unheard of in the past. So these are things that we can think about when we start to have fear. They may seem like small things as I'm talking about them now, but when there's so much to look to and be fearful about, even the smallest thing that we can look to and say, I am grateful for this, is super important and valid. Another thing medically that we can be thankful for is anesthesia. Anesthetics were not a thing until the mid-1800s. The first anesthesia ether was developed and used on a human being, and that revolutionized medicine. It allowed us to have procedures and not be in pain. It opened the doors to what is possible to care for a human being, to care for a patient. Can you even imagine what it would have been like to have to lose your leg in the 13th century? They just, give you something to bite down on and maybe knock you out, but they wouldn't have anything for pain relief and besides alcohol. So that is a huge thing that we can look to in general to be thankful for. Some other advancements we've achieved, in the most recent century and a half or so, is travel. Travel has become much more easy and much more widespread and much quicker than it ever used to be. It used to take a day to get to, the next town over, and now it takes 5, 10, 15 minutes. And to travel to a different continent was unheard of unless you were a sailor and that was your little job. We can connect with our others much easier. We can learn about new cultures by physically going to places where these cultures exist. And no common person in the past was ever able to do that. Speaking of connecting with our others, communication, we are in the dawn of the communication age, and it is just not slowing down. We have our phones, we have our computers, we have writing letters and the radio and the television, these are all things that were not very accessible or that didn't exist at all in previous centuries. And we are so lucky to be able to utilize these things and connect with other people, find people who are like-minded with us, find people who know more about different subjects than we do, who are experts. I mean, you can just go on Quora or Reddit or whatever and ask an expert about something that you would never even dream of knowing about, in previous times. we can learn new languages with ease and converse with people from other places in ways that we never could before, not on the scale that is possible now. In the mass production of technology and of information as well is something that we can be extremely grateful for. The fact that for at least, most of us in developed countries, we have very good access to educational materials and, books and articles and journals and things, anything that we might want to know about is at our fingertips, whether it's at a library or online, or with connecting with another person who knows about these things. I recognize that a lot of these things are not accessible to every person on the planet, and that it all depends upon your level of affluence and social mobility. I do recognize that, and I don't want to just gloss over the fact that, everybody can do these things. Not everybody does have access. However, for many people who do, these are things that we can think about and be grateful for, that they exist, and that humanity is much better off for it. If you're really searching for things to be grateful for, you can even be grateful that we have electricity, because before the late 1800s, that wasn't a thing. It was not anything that someone had inside of his or her home. No electric lights in people's homes. There were obviously no electronic devices such as phones, computers, radios. Things that we take for granted, like flicking on a light switch when you enter a room, was unheard of before the late 1800s. We are living in an unprecedented age of technology and advancement that we all should remember when it seems like there's not much to look at and feel good about. The final thing I put on my list that I have found to be grateful for in this day and age is the rising of the mass consciousness, the rising in vibration of humanity and of our planet. Because before this time and age, any person who would talk about the type of things that I'm talking about now and in these videos in general would be, labeled a witch or a heretic and would be killed. And many light workers today have had past lives where they've done this work too and have been killed for it. And it's important to remember that times are different now, and that's a good thing. We are doing this work, and we are not going to be persecuted in that way for it at this time. That's not going to happen to us this time, and that's great. That's a really good, positive thing. It allows us to have the freedom of expression in the majority of countries, and the freedom to talk about these things and spread light and love and truthful information to people about who they really are, and what the universe really is, and what life really is about. And I am so completely grateful for that, especially. It's also a time when information is so widely available and education is so much more accessible for a lot of people, where these ideas, these concepts, these truths can be accepted by others. Whereas before, the only information you got about spirituality or life and death or God or anything of that nature was from the church. And what the church said is how it was, and if you went against what the church said, you were killed. And so nobody wanted to believe what these people who were talking about something different were saying. And even if they wanted to believe it, they may not even understand what was being said. And so I am very happy that we live in this particular time, in this particular age, despite, what may be going on outside, because we have a very unique opportunity in human history to create change for the better, for the uplifting of the human spirit, and to help others on their paths. So those are some of the things I came up with. I would love it if you all could add some more stuff in the comments that I forgot about or didn't think of. I love that we can do that. So please do leave me some comments and let me know what you think, what you are grateful for, even if it's just that you woke up this morning and you felt well. I would love to hear about it. I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye.